Hey guys, so I know a lot of people were asking for my thoughts on the hard mode for King's Fall. Is it too easy, too hard? How's this fight, that fight? So I thought I would bring in some extra help today. So with me today, I have none other than the legend himself, Slayerage. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I am flattered to even hear you call me the legend himself instead of SC Slayerage, gotta say.
What now? Before we even, what is the SC?
SC, okay. It is literally, and not even joking, just a random pair of letters that Furball and I threw together when we thought we were going to be playing more as a team with SC as the title rather than like the legend himself as a clan.
Fair enough. Mystery solved. I've always wondered, like, what is the SC for? What is the hidden meaning? Nope, just some random letters. All right. So for those who might not know who you are or what you do, why don't you give a very brief introduction to yourself?
So, I guess the reason that I am quote unquote the legend himself, and the reason that we kind of stuck with that as a clan name was originally based on a joke from a guy in my clan who was the first weekly legend in the weekly updates from Bungie. But from there, my roommate at the time, Furball, and I went to two-man the Vault of Glass back when that was considered theoretically impossible because you needed at least four people to avoid a teleport. And since then, I've kind of carried that tradition of trying to do crazy things forward a little bit by doing a solo of Crota's End. I tried to solo Skolas and was just hairs off at a time, and then we have done things like two-manning Oryx, and most recently we did a four-man of hard mode Oryx at 413 max light on the team.
Yep, saw that. That's absolutely crazy. It makes my life easy because people always suggest challenge modes for me. So I'm just like, Slayer's probably already done it, so just go watch his thing. Much easier. You make my life so easy. So anyway, we're here today to talk a little bit about the hard mode for King's Fall. So I guess we'll just start right at the very beginning. We'll talk about all the bosses and then kind of riff from there. So pre-War Priest, the only thing that really changed was that in the jumping puzzle, there was no platform to act like a checkpoint. And I'm not really sure what other things people were expecting for the hard mode for like pre-boss fights or anything. I guess maybe I was expecting something with the intro, but then again, you know, I don't really know where they could have gone with it. I know you had something that you wanted to say about pre-War Priest.
Yeah, the right before the actual jumping puzzle, I found it pretty interesting that they did something that wasn't level scaled any differently for hard mode. Kind of like the Vault of Glass, where all the enemies are still level 26 on the outside, so you can get teams that aren't necessarily super strong going in with at least a little bit of momentum built up from having done the raid on the easier difficulty. I liked that touch personally.
Yeah, I mean the intro mechanic is still a lot of fun. I'm very glad they had something like that as opposed to something like Crota's End, where it's just like, let's step on this plate and we're inside.
Oh yeah, that was just so that felt tacked on.
Yeah. So let's move over to the Prove Your Worth encounter, and the only thing that really changed there was that one of the knights that spawns later in the encounter is a Hallowed Knight. So it's a major, has a little more health, and that was about it. So what did you think about that?
I um I was wondering the entire time if there were more ads because I know that in general when the heroic modifier is applied, they do include some yellow enemies in addition to normal enemies like you're saying. Then I also think that they actually might have included more acolytes on the sides. And I don't know if it was just because we were underleveled or not, but at any rate, it definitely felt more difficult at the time just because we're underleveled.
Right.
Which I have to say I really don't like that, actually, because if we're feeling overwhelmed just because we don't have the same strength we have, once we played hard mode a couple times and we gear up our characters, it's going to feel like it's the exact same encounter plus a yellow knight, which
Right.
I'm not really a huge fan of that. But I do like the encounter a lot. I will say that the design on that, it was a really cool throwback to the bridge on Crota's End because it felt like it was a lot more polished and it required much better coordination with the team and staying focused and that sort of thing.
Totally agree. Yeah, it did feel like maybe towards the end of, you know, when you're dumping Deathslinger's power into the plate that there were a few more enemies than usual spawning. But like you said, you know, it basically came down to these enemies are slightly stronger. And that is a good way of bumping up difficulty, is just, hey, these things are going to be harder to kill now. Deal with it.
I'm perfectly on board with that too. Just for the record, having stronger enemies is good. The only part that I do take any issue with is that we will level up to them.
Right.
I'd rather if we had some encounters that just stayed too high of a level for us, I guess.
So like if everything was like 320 across the board, or like 325 across the board, or even just whatever your light level is plus 10, just so it's scaled so it was always difficult. I could see that.
Yeah, except of course if they if they put it in like they did in Crotazam, where it's just a bunch of yellow enemies, because it does get to a point where it's annoying if you just can't kill things. But when they're red enemies and it takes 2 bullets instead of 1, that's cool. I'm good with that.
Right. Yeah, I was very glad to see that they didn't really jack up the rate of majors in the place. Like, that was really like one of the noticeable spots where they increased major counts, but then it was done in a fair amount. Like, it wasn't like every knight coming out was a yellow health bar. If that was the case, I think people would have a bigger problem with that, but it's only half or not as often. I think that's a lot more manageable.
I agree. I think that it felt like a really appropriate difficulty level.
Yeah. So let's move over to the War Priest now. And I'll be honest, on our first run, we didn't even know that anything changed with the War Priest because we ended up killing him in 1 damage cycle. So the new mechanics to us on that fight at the time were completely lost. We had to find out on our second run what actually went on. So that was something that actually kind of surprised me, was that it didn't feel like War Priest had any more health compared to normal. That, or we just ended up performing or having one of the best performances we've ever had in that fight, where we were able to get him down in 1 damage cycle. But he didn't really feel like any more or less of a threat at the time. And even with one superpower in him, probably going to be the Hobgoblin one, because everyone kind of starts in the middle, he didn't really feel that much more threatening. Neither did the ads. The ads were all the same. There weren't really any majors added to that fight either. I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm gonna have to disagree a little bit about the Hobgoblin power, because actually, one question for you first. How did you one cycle him? Were you using Touch of Malice, like Blessing of Light or something?
Yeah, we did Touch of Malice, Blessing, and Weapons of Light stacked, and we just beasted him down.
That's powerful. We I don't know exactly what my group did. We almost one cycled him. We were all using snipers, I believe. And I've been kind of curious about how a DPS comparison would go between Black Spindles or 1,000-Yard Stairs with Triple Tap versus Touch of Malice. Yeah. And if you guys one-cycled him, that's at least a kind of persuasive reason to think that Touch of Malice might at the very least be easier to use, because if you have Black Camera...
Oh, it's definitely easier to use on that fight, because you don't need to worry about his head bobbling all over the place for that crit, because that's what screws up everybody. It's just his head will just be like a bobblehead, and you can't get the shots on. So with Touch of Malice, you can just spam it for 4,000 damage a hit, and if you miss one shot, it's not a big deal.
That's why I liked using it on the Death Singers, because with their heads weaving and bobbing as much as they do, and they used to fight them, it was near impossible to actually get consistent headshots with a sniper.
Oh yeah, totally.
But I can see how it wouldn't seem like the War Priest was changed at all if you were fighting him and killing him in one phase. Mm-hmm. We took 2, and I believe that the power we got activated on our first run was the Captain Blinding Ball.
Oh, so you guys were on the right.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
And after we got that done, we avoided the first flurry of attacks from him, whatever many throws. I think it's just like 2 or so. And then it didn't really look like anything was that different, because he had that power, but it just travels so slowly, and it is a big attack, yes, but the room is so big that it's easy to dodge.
Right.
One of my teammates got hit by it once, and he got killed, I believe, in 1 hit from full health. So
oh, wow. It's
apparently fairly strong if it does hit you, but we were about still 10 light under-leveled, I believe, or something something like that. I will say that the fact that you can one-cycle him and he doesn't seem to have buffed health is kind of an issue, because...
I would agree.
If you can do that, then there is no change to his mechanics, and that's silly. And the fact that he gets powers based on where you stand it's good and bad. I guess it's kind of cool that you have at least a little bit of control over how the boss is going to be fighting back against you, but at the same time, it makes it so going from right to left is really just the ideal way to go about it, because on the left, he'll get the Axion darts that are going to track you down and hit you, and they're very hard to avoid. In the middle, he has the retaliatory attack from Hobgoblins, which, if you start staggering him, it doesn't matter, because even though he's looking down at his toes all the time, the retaliatory attack still comes at you, and it can hit you, and those, I do believe, are actually pretty dangerous, but the blinding ball's not too bad. So as long as you got a team with reasonable DPS, you can kill him really without even seeing changed mechanics.
Yeah, I was definitely expecting him to have at least maybe like 20-25% more health, so you would at the minimum have to deal with him having 1 power, unless you were just the greatest team on earth and were still able to one cycle him. That was definitely something that kind of surprised me, and I think could be something that could be buffed in the future is just buffing his health a little bit to make it actually seem like he's a more challenging encounter, because for those teams who can one cycle him, there's literally no difference at all. That being said, I think what they did with the fight definitely plays into kind of like a hard mode because, well, rather for those who don't know, they designed the hard mode first and then ripped stuff out to make it into a normal mode. So I think what they ended up ripping out for normal mode ends up making the hard mode completely understandable. And I think in general, they did a very good job with that. We'll kind of talk about that as we talk about all the other bosses.
I think one thing I'd really like to point out that I think I really, really strongly think they should have done with that fight differently is they're giving him 3 different taken abilities. I really think they should have given him the taken ability of teleportation. And then cycle between the 3 plates where he would stand, so that if you saw him teleport on your plate, he wouldn't necessarily just smash you instantly, but it would at least make the whole arena more dangerous, because my biggest gripe with normal mode was that he's really just not threatening.
Yeah, there's a lot of places to hide. Every side basically has a place where they can line of sight him, where you can avoid his attacks while simultaneously are able to hit all the adds in the encounter, and that just does not make it feel dangerous at all. Right side, there's plenty of places to hide. If you're in the middle, you can just kind of hide underneath the lip, and he won't even shoot you. And left side, it's a little more difficult, but you still have the monolith, and then kind of the small walls that are set up where you can just kind of crouch and shoot over the wall. So that something like the teleportation would definitely make him much more threatening. I agree. I also like that you can kind of control which attacks he gains and does not gain, because like I'm a big World of Warcraft nerd, so you know there were bosses like there's a set of 3 bosses, and depending on which order you killed them in, you would get different pieces of loot, whether they be better. And there's like, okay, this is the way you do it if it's easy, this is the way you do it if it's hard. So I think like if something like the normal mode had those powers in it, and then the hard mode also had the powers in it, there would be a way where it's like, okay, this is the easy way to kill him, but then if we kill him the hard way, then we're going to get better loot. And that kind of plays into what I think the challenge mode is going to be, is I think, right, I hope they just kind of gate his health at 25% per monolith, and you just have to fight him at full power and kill him at full power. That's my speculated challenge mode for that boss.
That is that's a pretty cool idea. I do think, kind of unrelated to the raid, but the Scion Flayers, the one you kill is the cloak you might get.
Right.
The Shield Brothers, I don't think you get different loot based on which one you kill. I could be wrong about that, but I know that if you kill Blastoise before Charizard actually becomes a serious problem.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do it the other way around, it doesn't up the difficulty very much, and it gets actually a bit easier. But I do think that what you said about the War Priest there, if they made it so where his health is gated like that, that would definitely make it a much more challenging fight. I like that idea.
Yeah. So let's move over to Golgoroth now. And the Golgoroth mechanic I actually really liked, even if it is pretty simple. So for Golgoroth, the new mechanics are he shoots 4 orbs instead of 3 if you're the tank, or quote-unquote tank. A lot more Curse Thrall will spawn, so you need one person actually dedicated to it instead of just one person saying like, yeah, I'll do it, and then kind of ignore it for most of the time. A lot more Taken Thrall will spawn, and the new actual mechanic is Unstable Light, where if you have stood in a pool or standing in a pool or something like that, he will randomly debuff a player in the pit with Unstable Light, and if you don't get away in 6 seconds from all your teammates, you will explode and you'll kill all your teammates. The Unstable Light doesn't actually do anything to you. If you have the debuff, it'll just kill everyone around you, and it'll make it very, very obvious who had the debuff and who killed who, and it's very easy to shame people, which I find hilarious. So what did you think about the changes to that encounter? Or the additions, rather.
Not to toot my own horn here, but I'm really proud of myself for how quickly I figured out the Unstable Light thing. My group went into there, and someone said, oh, I exploded, and then we couldn't exactly tell who had died, so it wasn't really very clear what happened, because the person who had Unstable Light killed someone who didn't, so it looked like the person who, didn't have Unstable Light somehow screwed up, maybe.
Yeah.
And when it actually appeared on my screen, I'm like, oh, I get this. And then I got out, nobody died, and within I don't know, within the first couple seconds of having the debuff, I don't know, I was very proud of myself.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fun mechanic too. It's something that is, you gotta be, you can't go tunnel vision. It's very easy to go tunnel vision in that encounter. So I know we had a problem recently with one guy just felt like every attempt he was getting it, and he's just blowing people up, and it's just like, it can be a game breaker. It can be a wipe mechanic totally, even if you lose one person, because then you're only having two people full-time DPS in the pit, and then things can just spiral out of control. So I really liked that addition.
I think it's a great mechanic. That's probably my favorite change to hard mode overall, just because it does, like you said, it does kind of give you an opportunity to shame the teammate that messes you up. But more importantly, and this kind of sounds maybe jerkish, but I really like that it separates weak links. If you're doing a hard mode challenge and you get a guy that just can't seem to figure out the 6-second timer for whatever reason, and he's killing the team, that's actually a pretty serious issue, and it would actually cause you to think about who you want to bring into hard mode, because you need people who are going to be able to carry their weight, which I like that aspect a lot.
And
I also like that it makes it so you can't just have 6 people standing still in the pool. It keeps your mind engaged while you're fighting the boss, which is really great too.
Yeah, I was just about to say that the easiest thing to do on that fight is go completely tunnel vision, and they fixed that by saying okay, well, now if you go full tunnel vision, you're going to kill your whole team, and then you're going to wipe. I wanted to get your thoughts on what is known as the one orb strat, where basically you knock down one orb and you just keep resetting the fight over and over and over again. For those who don't know, you just keep resetting it over and over and over again, and just do it that way instead of knocking down all of the orbs and going in whatever pattern you want to go in. Diamond, crisscross, zipper, whatever you want to do. I was kind of hoping that hard mode would get rid of that kind of strategy. I don't consider it a cheese at all, because at the end of the day, you're not breaking any mechanics, you're not glitching anything, you still have to fight the boss, you're not pushing him back into the pool that he spawned out of or anything crazy, so you still have to fight him. And I do think it's somewhat clever use of game mechanics, but I definitely would like to see that maybe kind of fixed up so people actually have to knock down all the orbs. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I can kind of agree, because I actually have had my fair share of arguments about the word cheese, because people in general don't seem to understand that the whole point of cheese is that it trivializes a game mechanic.
Right.
And in this case, I would say that it does not trivialize a game mechanic, because all that it's preventing is the spawn of cursed thralls. It's essentially really inefficient DPS. Because instead of having all 6 orbs where you get good damage on each of them, which a really coordinated team can do that well, you can just consolidate to the one orb and try to maximize your damage on that. And what I actually noticed on normal mode, at least, is that you really can do almost as well with just one orb. With one orb, we got him down to 60-ish, or excuse me, 40% of his health remaining one time,
right,
without much difficulty. It wasn't even necessarily a great attempt, so it was pretty clear we could do 2 orbs on that strategy on normal mode. Mm-hmm. And it looks like on hard mode they're almost encouraging it more by spawning in so many cursed thralls, because I absolutely more dangerous.
Yeah,
it's just, it inclines you to just do whatever you can to avoid all of them. So I do agree that they should really do something to make it where there's a good incentive to have more bubbles drop down, either have your damage get exponentially higher or make the pools last a shorter time or something like that, where you really need to do it, or really need to use all 6.
I was actually I was talking with Holtzmann about this, about how we would fix the fight in general to kind of prevent those strategies. I mean, first of all, just one orb I don't think is a cheese, but I do think it kind of ruins the spirit of the fight, because obviously the whole spirit of the fight is zipping back and forth and trading the tanks. My idea was that for every orb that's still remaining in the air, when he loses his gaze, they would fall down and heal him for a certain percentage. So that way, you can deal a lot of damage, but if you have 5 orbs dropping that heal him, he's probably going to go back to close to full health. Holtzmann's idea, which I thought was pretty good as well, was that for every orb that you waste, it would be applied to the Tablet of Ruin, which is basically a non-factor in the hard mode, which I thought was also a very good idea.
I actually really like both of your ideas. It's clear that you guys have thought about that a pretty good bit. My team had only talked about it in passing as we were running through it, where like I said, having the damage increase as you went would incline you to use all 6 orbs, but if you did something like that, you'd probably have teams that just knock down all 6, run through them, and then fire from the 6th or something like that, and basically do the same strategy with all kinds of enemies out, because the enemies, I believe, are on a timer rather than based on orb drops, as in, if you have his gaze for 20 seconds, Thrall spawn, 40 seconds, Thrall spawn.
Oh, right, yes.
You could just drop all 6 at once if you wanted, and probably deal with one wave of Cursed Thrall.
That's true. That's actually a very good call. Did not think of that. So, I guess the answer is not as simple as we thought. But yeah, I would definitely like to see something done about the one orb, just to bring the spirit of the fight back a little bit.
I do actually think that both of your solutions, though, would still be significantly better, because it does seem to me that the spirit of the fight does revolve in huge part around taking those orbs down, since they're so just resilient. So you really have to actually focus fire on them for a while to get them down, and if you had a team like actively focusing on that, it would still be a lot more interesting than just, okay, we knocked the ball down, hop in the pool and shoot.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about on that fight?
Something that I think is probably worth mentioning about Golgoroth, there are people who have said that you can shade step to make the ogre venom explode if you're the one holding the gaze.
Mm-hmm.
You can shoot them with Zalo Supercell, and that's extremely effective because it chains damage and then can destroy more than one at a time. And then I actually read, and I'm not sure if hopefully you can confirm this for me, so I'm not just spouting something that's totally wrong, but apparently if you go invisible and have his gaze vanish rather than actually have it lost, as in if he closes his back and you can't take it, the next time it says you've lost his gaze or whatever.
Right.
If you have a Blade Dancer or a Night Stalker use something for camo, or probably even Patience in Time if you really desperately wanted to kill your light level, you could go camo on the very last phase, say that Ogre's gaze has vanished, and that won't spawn in more ads apparently. So that might be something that would... I think that's something worth at least considering as far as strategy goes for hard mode, because with the ads being as much more dangerous as they are, you could really cut out a huge part of the fight by doing that.
Right. Now, do you think that's something that would be considered a cheese or not? Or
I would
clever
say
use?
no. I would say that's not even clever use of mechanics, because it seems like it's intentional use of mechanics. Because
Right.
there is text in the bottom left corner of the screen that says the ogre's gaze has vanished, which implies to me it is an option they intentionally put into the game. So
Yeah.
if you use it as expected and manage to avoid ads, that would actually kind of make the fight a little bit more interesting to me, because it kind of is just rinse and repeat the whole way through until taking Thrall spawn, and then it's just a slightly different variation of the same thing as before, whereas really you could do the whole fight without having any cycles repeating doing that, which is kind of nice as far as ad spawning. I also see a lot of teams don't seem to notice that the taken Thrall only spawn when you actually drop down into the pit,
Right.
which that's something that I would like to see changed at some point, because it seems like a lot of the fight just kind of revolves around spawning ads, and they're not really dangerous if you just stand in certain areas.
Yeah.
Like the pit is dangerous, it spawns ads. Standing at the back of the room, not dangerous. You can fire with a scout rifle or pulse rifle from near perfect safety. But overall, I love that fight. I thought that was... I really like the change for hard mode. It really makes the whole team feel a bit more engaged.
Yeah, totally agree. So nothing with the jumping puzzle after Golgoroth, known as Dickwall in my clan. Daughters, the only change here was that instead of getting that 20-second buffer of just being like, okay, let's see who has it and go to your platforms, you just gotta go right away. They don't give you that 20 seconds or 25 seconds or whatever it is. You just gotta go. And I think that was about what they could have done with that fight, besides introducing something completely new. It does make it harder. It definitely makes it more frantic, especially if you kill them on, if you kill both of them in one damage cycle. It makes that second one much more pressing. But otherwise, you didn't really need any sort of strategy change or anything like that. I don't know. Your thoughts?
So something just occurred to me that would have been kind of interesting, and this is kind of off the wall, so pardon me if it's just ridiculous. But the relic in Crota's End is a sword, and now that we actually have swords readily available, it would be kind of cool if we each just basically had a portable relic that was more or less necessary for the fight, and watching our ammo was part of the mechanic of it.
Mm-hmm.
If during the Oryx fight, you'll have Taken Knights spawning on the plates. They could have done the same thing in the Daughters fight and have Sword Knights spawn on the plates, where if you killed them, it would have the same effect of making the plate go down, like having the Knight on the plate is what activates it. And in order to, excuse me, not just the knight and your player, to keep it
Right.
active. So you would get on, like hold your sword defensively, and you'd have to hold the plates for a certain amount of time, and then kill the knights afterwards. That would be kind of cool. I'm just,
I like the concept. I like where you're going with it.
that was just something that occurred to me. Is like, my brain started rushing for ideas of how you could actually really change the fight because
Yeah.
I guess at the end of the day, what I kind of am getting at is without completely revamping the whole thing, they really could have just cut down on the time. It also seems to me that the timers weren't counting seconds. And I could be wrong about that, but it seemed like when I was playing on normal mode, it would go like 49, 48, 47, whereas on hard mode, I would very frequently see it go from 47 to 45 or 30 to 28.
I saw that as well. I think that's just the timer screwing up. I feel like
I
it's
thought it
that.
might be that too. I'm not sure. That definitely crossed my mind, but it seems like it might have been screwing up because it's having a difficulty considering seconds while being on an actually faster timer.
Yeah.
Like if it's
Yeah.
going 1.2 seconds per second, then it might not count a second because it just skips over it on accident.
Right. Good call. Yeah. I mean, I haven't done any sort of time calculations to see if it's actually 1 minute or anything like that. But still kind of feels the same. Didn't really feel any different. At least compared to normal mode. At least for me. I don't know. Maybe you felt
It
a slight
didn't feel
difference.
enough different that I would be comfortable saying it felt different. I know
Right.
that. I do like the fact that they removed that 20-second buffer. That really does crunch the team's time
yeah.
a lot harder than it did before.
Oh yeah. So now let's move over to Oryx, and Oryx really did not get changed too much. Like the fight seems much more frantic, and it feels a lot more chaotic. But all they really did is just add 4 melee knights. That's all they did. It's just the way that they are incorporated into the fight makes it feel that much more insane. At least maybe for when you're first learning it. So what they did was, whenever an ogre spawns, you would have that light eater ogre spawn, and then on the opposite side of the room, you would have a light eater knight spawn, and that light eater knight basically is the same as the vessel of Oryx, where all it wants to do is just run around and gobble up those corrupted light things, and you gotta kill them. And if you don't, then that guarantees that you have to do another Oryx damage cycle. Like, even if they get just one, you have to do a whole nother set. So that was the main change, and it definitely made the fight more frantic, even beyond the fact that Oryx is 320 and everything in there is 320, and most of us were under 310 probably for our first kills. Once you kind of got it figured out, I mean, at least for my team, I was the guy jumping to get the brand, so I didn't really know what was going on down low until our second run. But once I figured out what was going on in the second run, I really had to commend my team for picking it up as quick as they did, because it felt like the first couple attempts we were just getting our asses kicked, and then all of a sudden for them it just clicked. And from then on, I think it took maybe three or four more attempts to kind of flesh it out, and then we got it right after that. I don't know. What did you think of the addition of the knights?
The knights are awesome. I really, really like them because, and this is probably just a really specific thing that I love personally, but knights are my favorite enemies to snipe in the game. I don't know why. I guess it's because they have gigantic heads.
They
and it
got a
makes me
big
feel like
ass
a
head.
badass. Yeah.
Big head.
But what I didn't know anything about the knights either for a while because I was doing the brand claimer just like you. But once I actually got a chance to look at the mechanics and discovered that the knights actually spawn as the ogre opposite them dies, as in the ogre on the, I don't know how to describe this plate exactly, but on R2, which is the one on the right side from the entrance, closer to Oryx, just for clarity, if you kill that ogre, the knight on the L2 side will spawn as it dies. And knowing that fact changed the fight completely for me when I was doing one of the plate defenses, because basically what that means is you can prevent the fight from getting frantic in the first place by making sure that if you're going to kill an ogre, you're prepared to snipe the knight that's going for the ball.
Right.
Which is also something worth noting in my opinion. The Vessel of Oryx, and when we were doing a 3-man attempt, it was very clear that the Vessel is just kind of stupid. I don't know, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
He's
I know what you're
bad at
saying.
grabbing the bombs. If
Yeah.
once you kill him, and he comes fresh every time. He doesn't grab bombs very often at all. But the knights are completely different. And it
Oh,
seems
they
like that's because
beeline.
they're linked to the ogre. Say again?
I said no. Those knights beeline for those.
Yeah.
For
I
those
think that
corrupted
is
light.
because they are linked to the bomb. Like I said, when you kill one ogre, the specific knight spawns. I think that's because that knight is going for that bomb. So they beeline it, like you're saying. And if they get to the bomb, they take it immediately. There is no stopping them, like, at all. I'm pretty sure you can even stagger them and they'll still take it.
Yeah.
Which is what I really liked about it, because it felt like you had to be really deliberate about when you killed the ogre. You had to make sure that you'd have a good sniping angle on the knight. And I really liked that they weren't just running around like they're just completely hopeless like the Vessel of Oryx does. It doesn't really make the fight a lot harder overall, especially because a lot of people are saying there's this quote-unquote easy strategy where you just leave the ogres alive, get them to about 25% health or something like that.
Yeah. I saw that.
Don't like that. I gotta say.
I don't when I first heard about it, like someone came into our team and said, like, guys, it's a new Oryx cheese. Some people figured it out. And I was like, all right, let me take a look at it. And what the strategy ended up being just seemed way riskier than just doing it the normal way. Because like leaving ogres alive is terrible. Like you'd never want to do that.
The side, like, when you're setting up the plates, there's going to be either two ogres spawn in the beginning. Well, I don't know how to express this really well because I'm thinking too much about when we were trying to do a 4-man attempt and we had to strategize around that. But I guess the point really is that if you got two ogres alive, they're going to have an angle on one person or the other on a plate. And when you're 10 light under leveled, you really can't just, you can't afford to stand on the plate while your brand claimer gets the brand with an ogre staring at you. It's just, I guess you could try to stun lock them to death, but I haven't seen someone do that strategy to where I would be fully confident it's easier, because just really the main thing for me is just knowing that when you kill an ogre, someone needs to be sniping across to the knight, and it'll make the whole thing that much easier. There's not really anything frantic about it at all.
Right.
There's no reason to try and keep the ogres alive, because it just makes it dangerous when all you have to do to make it not dangerous in the first place is just make sure you can also prevent them from having the bomb taken.
Yeah.
Then it's no different from normal mode.
It feels much riskier to do that, like almost high risk, high reward, but the risk of doing it the normal way doesn't really feel like it changed. Like that feels much more luck based. Like, okay, we got the ogres in position and somebody got eye-beamed. Or like, oh, they walked out of position. Like, it feels like it relies too much on luck and AI targeting and all that kind of stuff to make sure everything goes smoothly. I mean, I haven't done it, so maybe other people who have done it can comment, but it just kind of feels luck based, and just if someone gets caught, your run's basically over. At least for 99.9% of groups, your run is done when somebody dies in the early game.
I mean, you really either want to have cover from an enemy or have the enemy be dead. That's just a pretty simple generic rule to apply to any first-person shooter ever.
Yeah. So no elemental prime, or was there anything you want to say on Oryx?
So at this point, I guess since we covered more or less the entire raid, I do think that I remember reading somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, there was something Luke Smith had said about a trick that they're looking forward to us seeing in heroic mode. Do you know anything about that? Am I making that up completely?
I don't remember anything about that, but I'm sure if it is a thing, someone will immediately post in the comments what it is, but I don't remember anything offhand.
Okay, I may have just gotten some bad information off of the internet somewhere or other, but I was wondering the whole time what the cool trick we were supposed to run into was, and it didn't really seem like there was anything that was that crazy. I guess my favorite mechanic, Unstable Light, might have had something to do with it, because you got like that's gonna kill 4 people on everybody's first attempt.
Right.
I thought I had a giggle about that, but no, I guess that's about all I had to say about the raid for the moment.
So, sort of related to the raid is the fact that there's no elemental primaries, and a lot of people were kind of pissed off about that, but it was a change that I can totally understand happened. First year Destiny, elemental primaries were just above and beyond the better choice for PvE purposes. There was no reason not to run with an elemental primary over anything else, just because it made your life that much easier. It made the nightfalls a complete joke. So I'm sad to see them go because they're great weapons, but I can totally understand why they did it. It's to increase weapon parity across everything, because there's so many good elemental primaries right now. There's so many good ones in the game, and having elemental primaries would just bring that list right back down to, do you have an Arc, Solar, or Void version of it, and you'd basically be locked to those weapons if you wanted to min-max. So I'm glad to see that they kind of went away, and I guess that kind of helps them balance stuff in the future as well, knowing that people are not going to have these guns that are going to be doing 3 times the normal damage on their primary slot. Heavy and special, that's whatever. But I understand why the change was made.
I really think that people are missing the mark with that one completely, to be honest. I think that Bungie removing elemental primaries is just almost a silly solution to the problem, because when we have elemental modifiers being as rare as they are, they're only available, as far as I can think, in the Prison of Elders and Nightfalls. Am I right about that?
Correct. Yeah. As far as I know.
You do the Nightfall over the course of 10 minutes once a week per character. So it's the amount of time that the modifier actually matters is pretty much not even a consideration. And then you've got, like, when you're playing through, I guess, Cerberus Strike, for instance, you're going to run Vision of Confluence back in the day because it had a solar weapon and there was solar shields and enemies at a solar range, so it all added up really nicely together. But I guess that's even the best decision, but I always ran Fatebringer. And when I went into Fogoth, I ran Fatebringer. And when I went into the Vault of Glass, I ran Fatebringer. And it had nothing to do with arc damage. It was because it was a hand cannon, which at the time had amazing range and impact and Firefly. And so the fact that if they had taken arc burn off of Fatebringer and made it where it had no burn at all, I'd still probably use it almost the same exact amount, because
that's true.
Fatebringer was what was amazing. And Vision of Confluence was an amazing scout rifle. And I guess Atheon's Epilogue was kind of a joke by comparison, but the elemental primaries, you don't really hear about people using Fang of Uriut to anywhere near the effect you heard people talking about Fatebringer. I think the elemental system in general is kind of a mess, honestly, because they've got 3 elements, and we've got 3 subclasses that are each going to cover one of those elements. That part is good, but I think that really we'd be doing a lot better if there was a lot of different elements, like 6 or 7 or something like that, to where we actually had to consider our weapon choice a little bit based around the damage that we're trying to do, because it's just not worth changing your secondary weapon from something that does arc damage to something that does solar damage just to kill solar shielded enemies. And if you have to choose your weapon loadout specifically for a Nightfall, like, that's fine, but all they're really doing is trivializing the Nightfall, because you're literally twice as strong as you were before. That's all the effect is. And I mean, enemies are going to do more damage, but we're smarter than enemies, so we're going to capitalize on the advantage, and they're not. So I feel like the elemental system is kind of the problem there. Having elemental primaries wasn't the problem. It was kind of coincidental that Fatebringer was such a ridiculously strong weapon. Like, people who got Void and Solar Jewels of Osiris, did you ever hear anyone complaining about those being too powerful?
No.
Everybody wanted one because it was solar, and it was the only solar hand cannon, but no one used it because it wasn't useful.
I mean, that was a whole problem. I remember Luke calling it the Luke Smith fall collection of weapons. So someone called it like that. And like, those weapons were just so over the top good that nothing else was ever going to compete. But like you were saying, I think that goes beyond elements in general. And that was just like a weapon problem, in that they were so good, you would never use anything else.
And if they had made weapons that were more powerful, it would just be a huge power creep issue where our Guardians would become way too strong, way too fast.
Exactly.
So I understand removing it, but I do think that if they had something where we could, like, I saw an idea, I wish I could credit who actually came up with it, but like getting elemental bullets from the gunsmith, and then you can apply it to your primary, and your gun shoots void bullets for a little while. Or even if you could maybe infuse guns with certain elemental abilities, and that would be kind of cool. But at the end of the day, I really think that the reason that it's hard to solve that issue, and the reason that they're removing elemental primaries in general, is because the elemental system itself is flawed and needs to be redesigned. And I don't have a perfect solution off the top of my head, and if I did, I'd probably be hard-pressed to share it in a matter of 30 seconds or something like that. But I really think that the issue is not elemental primaries by any stretch. Although it is very good that in removing them, they've encouraged us to use Surus Regime and Red Death and
Right.
like things like the First Curse, which is bad by the way, in
Yep. Not very good.
PvE. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always going to be a fan of more weapon parity, especially after the first year where it's just like Faebringer, Found Verdict, and whatever heavy G-Horn. Like that's like the pinnacle of weapon setups from year one. Like you can't get much stronger than that. Black Hammer, also very true. Back when snipers reigned supreme. So I'm always going to be a fan of actually having options, and the fact that I think there's so many good so many good primary weapons in general that people can't really agree, like, no, this is the best primary, this is the best primary. The fact that no one can agree, I think, is a very good thing for the game.
I in PvE, I absolutely love that. PvP wise, pulse rifles need to be dialed back a bit currently.
Yeah, they are definitely on the strong end of the spectrum right now. I think hand cannons could use maybe the slightest bit of love back up, but that's another story for another day. So the last thing we have is challenge modes. Now, we don't know when these are coming out. We don't know what you have to do for them. We don't even know if they're going to tell us what they are. It might just be like, challenge mode available. Go in, and it just says, kill Golgoroth. Like, it could just be like that, and we just don't know how to do it. We kind of talked about War Priest challenge mode, but I think it's going to be where they gate his health every 25%, and you just have to fight him at full power. And we tried that once, just kind of like, oh, let's see what happens. And it got pretty nasty when he's at full power. So
okay, question: did you lose?
We did lose. Yeah, we didn't really give it like too much of a serious shot, but we did not end up killing him.
Was it a spectacular failure where there was no hope of proceeding, or was it more of a you lost but you would have gotten it next time if you had actually given it another shot? Probably.
I think if we get in there for a little while and actually practiced it instead of just seeing like, oh, let's see what his abilities are and everything like that, because that's basically what our attempt was just like, okay, what ability does he have when he goes over here, and what ability does he have when we're over here, and like, oh, what does he look like when he has all of them? Oh my god, it's crazy. And so like, it wasn't the most serious attempt, but I think if we got in there and kind of bashed our heads on it for a little while, I think we could definitely get it with a little more coordination.
What I would personally like to see overall with challenge modes is I would like for challenge mode to be the thing where if you see that a team has beat it, you're like, dang, those guys must really know what they're doing with the raid. Mm-hmm. I would like, and I know this is obviously a select few people that play to the level that my group does, just because it's not really reasonable time-wise, but when we do something like normal Oryx with 6 people and then afterwards realize we can drop it all the way down to 2, and we could even do 1 if the ogres didn't make that more or less impossible by the way they stand. Like, the fact that you're on the verge of taking a 6-man activity and dropping it to 1, and the 1 person still wouldn't even necessarily be the craziest challenge in the world. We would like as a group, we've pretty much talked and said we want it to be where beating hard mode Oryx with something like a 3-man fire team would be crazy. We would like if beating challenge mode at all was crazy to that same effect.
I know a lot of my clanmates feel the same way. It's just like some people even want hard mode to be even harder, and we're always like, my group, your group, we're always the kind of people who are looking to get our ass kicked. Like,
yes.
We want to get our ass kicked so hard and just be like, what do we freaking do now? Like, how do we do this? And that is a very small section of the Destiny community, and probably like any sort of PvE community in general. And I'm totally with you on that. Just kick my ass. Bring them up to 340 for all I care. Just kick my ass. I want to be challenged, and I'm just like that with you. Make people in the tower say, wow, how the hell did you do that? And that was something that I felt like the first year of Destiny in general was lacking, was just those kind of things that made people go, how did you get that? Or how did you do that? And it's like, well, let me tell you a story. And you just, there wasn't enough of those moments. And so I completely agree. If the challenge modes were something like that, where you see that emblem and you're just like, holy crap, they're awesome.
Yeah,
I would love for more of that.
Exactly. Like, I know that, or I don't know for a fact, but I see the Oryx emblem, the the one that's, I believe, yellow and purple. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
With Oryx on the side. That one looks really cool. I would love to see that thing barred from players that don't like really subject themselves to a week-long ass kicking to get it. Because I mean, and the thing is too, and I know it's obviously Bungie's game. They're going to decide to make it how they will, but I think they're probably a little too hesitant to make content that's, I guess, locked off for normal players.
Right.
Because if you have something like that where there's a guy running around with that emblem, and the main difficulty keeping a normal player from getting it is that they're like 30 light under leveled, then come the next expansion, they'll be able to get the awesome emblem. And I know that it might not be as relevant at that time, but I think that when you see people who have stuff that you don't, it inclines you to want to like try a little bit more and accomplish things that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. I know that a lot of people who've watched some of the videos that I put out say things like, "You inspired me to play more," and having those kinds of feelings come out of Destiny has got to be good for marketing to some extent. I know that there are probably things like, I mean, Crota's End was kind of a fiasco overall, but when you have really hard challenges to strive for, and there's like a giant skill disparity where the game is really fun as a casual player and really fun as a hardcore player too, I think that I can't see how that could be a bad thing, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm totally in agreement. It's just, for Bungie to put out this super hardcore content for the super hardcore players, they probably don't see it as a great time investment. Like, why are they going to put out... I mean, it works with me as well. Like, why am I going to put out this video when I know this other video is probably going to be watched by more people because those are the people who want that kind of information? Why are we going to put out a super screw you challenge mode for, like, 0.5% of the community when we could be working on the next raid or something else that might be played by more people? So,
and that's exactly why I think that having things overlevel us being a main difficulty and having things just consistently overlevel us regardless of how good of the gear we get is, like, if you can get 320 max light and the heroic mode is, or the challenge mode rather, is like 350 or 340 or something where you're just like grossly underleveled, that couldn't possibly take very much effort to implement.
right.
But at the same time, it could also be seen as putting out lazy content. So there's definitely a lot of reasons you could say one way or the other, I guess. But I guess I just would like to see some content that's challenging enough to make it where we don't get to just farm it out for a couple months waiting for the next expansion.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Because I think we're coming up on like 50 minutes here.
I guess I don't have anything right now.
Yeah, I don't have anything either. So I think we'll close it out there. Where can people find you?
I am on twitch.tv/SC_Slayerage. And on YouTube, I am, if you look The Legend himself, that is my clan's page.
I will have all of those links in the description for those who want to check out Slayerage. Basically, Slayerage is the player I want to be in terms of skill level and challenge modes and all that kind of stuff. So if you're always looking for the next big challenge or the next crazy thing to happen, definitely go check out Slayerage. He streams a lot. How often do you stream? 4 or 5 days a week?
Yeah, 4 or 5 days. I stream probably every day, and then I've just got regular days on the weekday.
Yeah. So definitely go check out Slayerage. Thank you guys very much for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed, I guess, this mini podcast, I guess we'd call it. And I will see you guys next time.